What is going on? Welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown. It is episode 84, and we are officially on draft week, finally. I'm your host, Johnny Stope. Welcome inside the show, and alongside me, as always, Robert Munich. Robert, finally, it's draft week.
Yeah, happy draft week. And it actually, for the first time in a long time, I feel like this is actually going to be a very big week around the NHL. If the weekend is any indication about what we're going to see this week, there actually could be a lot of fireworks, which I'm super pumped about.
There has been a lot of moves already. There's a lot of rumors on social media right now. There's a lot of clickbaity stuff out there right now. I think we're going to be in for a wild week. I am here for it. I cannot wait for the action, see what else we get and the fallout from what we've seen so far. The Florida Panthers seem to be trying to do NHL 26 in real life, so that's kind of fun to watch that happen. Seattle's trying to make moves within the division. The Oilers are signing old players again. A lot of fun, Robert, around the National Hockey League this week, heading into the draft.
Well, like so between the trades and then also the uncertainty around the first round of the draft.
Yep.
I think we're in for like a really intriguing, exciting next few days here, which is going to be awesome.
And it could go a lot of different ways too. A lot of movement, a lot of players. Who's going to get traded? There's rumors out there from Elliot Friedman and others that there could be more trade demands out there. Like we know Dylan Larkin's available, and Connor Hellebuck's available. Who else demands a trade? So all those rumors are circulating around. There's a lot going on out there, Robert, and it. When you're geeks like you and I for this game and for this kind of stuff, it's a very exciting week. I'm not sure I'm going to be very productive at the paying job, so hopefully my boss is understanding this week. Let's dive into some trade or some draft week topics. Let's chat about what we have coming up for the Flames, what we can see from the Flames. Let's start with our own list, though, Robert. We took some paper and some pens, and we wrote down a list of our top 10s. Do you want to go 1 through 10 or do you want to go 10 to 1?
Let's go 1 through 10.
1 through 10. All right, Rob, you're on the clock. You're Toronto Maple Leafs. Who do you have at the top of your list?
So yeah, this is not going to be exciting, but it is Gavin McKenna. And mainly just because I think he's got the elite vision and the elite hands. I think offensively, he has the potential to be upwards of like a 90-point winger in this league. He might even go a little bit above that in a couple career years, but I don't know if anyone else in this draft has like the same ceiling as McKenna. So yeah, I got him at number 1.
We'll just keep that boring train going and say that the best player in this draft is Gavin McKenna. And if Toronto goes anywhere other than Gavin McKenna, they're trying to big brain it, in my opinion. This guy has everything you just mentioned there, Robert. I think it's exactly what they could use there, exactly what they were missing as well in their last season. A guy who can create and play make and get Austin Matthews or William Nylander the puck. I think that's a very smart pick by them, and they'd be dumb to go elsewhere. Second best player in this draft for you, your ranking, your number 2 guy, is it Ivar Stenberg like mine, or did you go elsewhere with yours?
Yeah, I went Ivar Stenberg as well. And, he feels like the total package in terms of defense, competitiveness, skill, playmaking, scoring ability. Feels like he's going to be anywhere between like a 60 to 75 point winger who's going to play really strong two-way hockey and sounds like a very valuable piece. I've heard some people kind of compare him to a guy like Jake Gensel, and I think any team that picks up a guy like Stenberg is going to be super, super happy.
Yeah, this guy might be more NHL ready right now than Gavin McKenna is, and so if you're, say, Vancouver and he's there at 3, how do you not go up to the podium and take this guy? Lots of skill there, very smart hockey player, and he's a Swede, and those Swede players like to work hard and play hard at their craft. So Ivar Stenberg at 2 for me as well. This, I think, is where it gets a little bit of fun of how rankings go. I think it's pretty consensus that McKenna and Stenberg are your 1-2 across a lot of draft boards, unless people are trying to get clickbait out there. Other people have a defenseman in there for some reason. But at number 3, Robert, does your list vary than mine? It's going to be interesting to see how it goes from here. What do you have at number 3?
So yeah, number 3, I actually went with Carson Karls.
I love that.
It feels like, they always say like guys have helium around the draft, like that they're risers. And
yep,
he's one of those guys that feels like he's got some helium to him. Just listening to different prospect experts and their discussions with other NHL teams, it feels like Carson Karls is a significant riser right now, and there's a lot of people saying that he's truly the best defenseman in this draft. And I have a feeling that one of these kind of old school, scouting staff guys, like a director of amateur scouting, they're just going to fall in love with the idea of Carson Karls. Like, maybe the, obviously he's like a really good player, but it's like the things off the ice, like the whole, like, he's from a cattle farm and he's a good Western Canadian boy. And I think scouts are just going to fall in love with that. And I just have a sneaking suspicion he's going to go higher in the draft than most people think.
Yeah, I like that call from you. That's a good one. That's a nice one. I went Caleb Malhotra for a lot of the things you just mentioned there with risers. Best center in this draft. A lot of people are calling him. I think he's had the best rise in the second half of the season. I think his name value holds a lot of weight among NHL scouts and what he could potentially be at the next level. I think this guy is going to be a better player than his dad was, and he's showing an offensive spark we didn't see really from Manny Malhotra when he played. We're seeing from Caleb, and I think the position helps in his rise as well. Not a lot of high-end centers in this year's draft, according to experts. And so I got Caleb Malhotra in my number 3 hole, and I think that's a very smart hockey player that someone's going to be very, very happy with. And in a small part of me hopes that people screw this up and he falls to the Flames at 6, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I got Caleb Malhotra in the 3 spot. At number 4, where are you headed with number 4? Are you staying defenseman? Do you got Caleb Malhotra sneaking in there? What do you got at 4?
No, I got Chase Reed.
Yep.
And just like watching highlights of him, you can tell he's a very dynamic player, and he's one of those guys who's a bit of a late bloomer. And if this is what he is as a late bloomer, like right now at age 18, like I'm really excited to see what he can be 19, 20, 21 years old, and just how good he can potentially be. So yeah, I got Chase Reed at 4. I think the thing that separated him between the thing that separated Karls and Reed on my list was just, I feel like Karls, he put up more points than Reed did at a similar level. And it just feels like Karls has a more well-rounded game. Like he's got the physicality to him. He plays, pretty strong defense. I don't know if Reed's in like the same boat and kind of the same category there, but I feel like they have similar offensive upside. So I kind of gave the edge to Karls at 3, but yeah, I got Chase Reed at 4.
I'll do my 4-5 real quick here back to back, because I kind of went with the 2 guys you've already mentioned. I got Reed at 4, and then I got Karls at 5. And for the same reasons you just listed off, these guys for me are neck and neck, and you can flip-flop them any order in the draft. It's, what do you prefer, left shot, right shot? Do you want a little bit more offense in Reed versus a little bit more two-way game in Karls? Where do you prefer? But these 2 guys are just 2 incredible hockey players, and I don't think that scouts will be disappointed in taking either of these guys. So if you're picking at 4 and it's either one of these 2 guys, you're happily taking either one of them. So for me, I've got Reed at 4, and then I got Karls at 5. So where do you got at 5 there, Robert? Then.
So I got Vigo Bjork. He's the number 1 center on my list. I feel like the ceiling might be a little bit higher than Malhotra. The thing that kind of worries me about Malhotra just a little bit, like I think he's going to be an NHL player, no doubt.
Yeah.
But he's basically kind of gone from obscurity. Had a mediocre year in the BCHL last year. Didn't get off to the best start in Brantford this year, but then he kind of just took off in the second half of the season, and then he really turned it on in the playoffs. It feels like a very small sample size of elite play, where if you even go back to like Vigo Bjork's, 15, 16-year-old seasons in Sweden, like he was putting up historic numbers. Thomas Drance wrote a really good article in The Athletic about Bjork, and if you're an Athletic subscriber, I highly recommend you go and take a look at it. But like he was like, Vigo Bjork was essentially a phenom in Sweden in his younger days, and then by all accounts he had a really strong season playing against men down the middle of the ice this year. He had a great World Junior, great World Championship. I feel like the pedigree and the ceiling is just a little bit higher with Vigo Bjork compared to Malhotra, but I think both are really good players. But yeah, I'm going Bjork at 5, my number 1 center.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'll talk about Bjork in a little bit here when I get to him on my list. We got at 6.
Now I'm going Caleb Malhotra. And I see Malhotra as he has the potential to be a really strong two-way centerman. The guy I'm kind of looking at is a Bo Horvat type of player. Good size, good skater, powerful guy, could be a good two-way player, but doesn't necessarily he's not necessarily like your typical number one center. I could see him being like a 55 to 65 point center, plays strong two-way minutes, can PK, can play in the power play, just kind of that jack of all trades guy. And that could be incredibly valuable for any team. So yeah, I got him at my number 6.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Caleb Malhotra, I think that's a hell of a player, and I think he's going to go a lot higher than anybody thinks for us. I think Vancouver's still very much on the table for him. For my number 6, I'm gonna read a tweet from Cam Robertson. If you don't follow him, he's part of Elite Prospects, does a lot of good scouting. So at number 6, I've got the guy who I think the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth on, Keaton Verhoff. He says the discourse around Keaton Verhoff has swung hard this season. At one point, he was probably getting a little bit too much hype, and now it feels like the pendulum has swung too far the other direction. So I've seen him as high as 2 on lists, and I've seen him as low as 14 on someone's list. I think this is a hockey player that some are sleeping on. I think people are paying too much attention to this, just the beginning of his season in North Dakota. They're not watching the whole thing and how it ended and how he finished that season. I think they're taking out of consideration what he did in the WHL before moving to NCAA and challenging himself. I like a player who tries to challenge himself and tries to better himself as a hockey player. In his draft year, we saw it with Gavin McKenna. Keaton Verhoff did the same thing, and I think that he's still a very good hockey player. One of the younger players in the draft as well, maybe a little bit more raw for some people, but for me, Keaton Verhoff seems like a very good bet to take, and I'm a big fan of betting on skill, and that's what Keaton Verhoff brings to the table. So at number 6, I have Keaton Verhoff.
I like it, and yeah, I really have this gut feeling that's what's going to happen. I think the Flames are going to end up taking him, which I'd be totally fine with. But like the whole Jerome McGinley coached him. He lived with Jerome. He's friends with Reshny. He's a big right shot D. Like there's a lot of things that are kind of pointing the Flames in the direction of Keaton Verhoff right now. So I could see that happening. But no, that's a good breakdown of him.
He's definitely, I think, the player that's rise and falls a lot more than a lot of these other guys have. Like, it's just wild the swings that this guy has gotten in draft rankings across the board. Number 7, where are you headed there with number 7 on your list?
So yeah, I've been high on Daxon Rudolph. I think I'm higher on Rudolph than a lot of people are. So I got him at number 7. I love the size, the poise with the puck, the skill, the puck movement. There's a little bit of physicality to his game too. I think he's the complete package of a player. I think his offensive ceiling is a little bit higher than Verhoff, so that's why I have him one spot ahead. But yeah, I'll go Daxon Rudolph 7, and then my number 8 is Keaton Verhoff. And basically everything you said about him is I feel the exact same way. So yeah, that's kind of my 7-8 right now.
Love it very much. 7, that's where you find Vigo Bork on my list. I'm gonna be that guy, and I'm not the size conversation, the other conversation. I don't know if I've watched enough of him to say that he's an absolute center in the National Hockey League. He definitely can be. We've seen it happen. Guys like Logan Steenkoven has shown you can have smaller centers and they can work. Does he project at a center or a winger? For me, that does affect his draft stock. If he's a surefire, no doubt top center, I think I'd have him a little higher on my list. But that conversation of is he a center or is he a winger does still remain for me personally. Again, I don't watch him a ton, only going on based on what I'm reading, what I'm seeing on social media as well. So I do love the player though, and I think that if he gets picked anywhere in that top 10, that team's going to have a tremendous hockey player with a ton of skill and a ton of opportunity for him to be a top 6 and potentially a top center in the National Hockey League. This guy has a lot of hockey sense, and I think that's his biggest asset to go along with what he can do on the ice with his stick. And then at number 8, I have your boy. I have Rudolph there. I am higher on him as well. Not as high as you are, but higher on him than a lot of people are. I think this guy, he's almost to the level of the Carrolls and the Reed conversation. This guy does a lot of work, and if you don't watch the Western Hockey League and don't watch Prince Albert games, you don't appreciate what he actually brings to the table. He's like a quiet leader for that group as well. He just goes and he does a lot of things really well, and he's a very steady defenseman. So I've got him at my 8 spot.
And then I'll go to pick 9. So pick 9 for me is Wyatt Cullen
Love it.
Just that by all accounts, the U.S. development team this year, probably one of the worst in the program's history, and yet he was still a guy that was over a point per game, led that program in points. Like I think he was kind of one of the shining stars of that program, and he just continues to get bigger and bigger. Like I don't know if he's done growing. I think he started the year. It was either this year or the beginning of last season. He was like 5'9", 140 pounds. We're talking like kind of Johnny Gaudreau size at the time. And over the last couple of years, he's sprung up, and now I think he's 6'1", closing in on 180. So like he's growing. He's going to bring some size, and just got that electric skill set, the great skating, the great hands, the playmaking. Like there's the potential for this guy to be like a point per game player in the NHL if he hits his ceiling. And that's Cullen's definitely one of those guys where you're taking a swing on him. Like I feel like the ceiling's quite high, but the floor could also be quite low. Like almost like I'll get back to my comparison. It was like a New York Islanders guy, Oliver Wahlstrom. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
He feels like an Oliver Wahlstrom kind of guy, where it's like in junior he was incredible, or even like you could say like Cole Yzerman. Just guys that could score goals, that could play kind of that high end hockey. But if they don't make it, then like they're not even going to play in the NHL. But if they kind of hit their ceiling, they could be really good players in the league. So I think he's kind of one of those guys. But yeah, he's my number 9.
I have him there too, and for a lot of things you just mentioned there, I just think this guy's probably my biggest riser in the draft from guys that I've read upon and watched the clips for. I think his game is there. I think if he can find the mark, like you mentioned there, Robert, this guy could be a pretty good NHL player for somebody. He really feels like a Winnipeg Jet type of player if they pick at number 8 or somewhere in there. He also feels like a guy that could slip down to 11 there around the St. Louis type of pick. I like this player a lot, and I'm hoping he hits a stride, because if he can do in the National Hockey League some of the things he's doing at the development team level, I think he'll be a special player for someone. Let's round out our top 10 of our list. I'll go first on this one. I've got a guy that I don't think is getting enough love, and he's, for a lot of people, the biggest bust of the draft already before he's even been picked, all because he made a move mid-season and things didn't go perfect for this guy. I have Tynan Lawrence still in my top 10. I think a centerman, decent size. He's got good skill. And if you go back over the history of him before he moved to the NCAA, this guy just destroys the competition at his age level, and challenging himself in the NCAA against bigger, tougher competition didn't go as planned for him, I'm sure. I don't mind the call to do it, but when he plays against his peers, he absolutely destroys them, and I think he has a lot of untapped skill there. So for me, Tynan Lawrence is my number 10.
And then mine is Albert Smith's. It just feels like he is guaranteed to be an NHL player. The question just becomes, what's the ceiling? What's the floor? I could see this guy being kind of like a number 2 defenseman, playing top pairing minutes, being kind of a defensive shutdown guy. He's big, he's rangy, he's got a little bit of skill to him. I could see him being that top pairing defenseman. I could also see him kind of being like a number 4 or number 5, where he's just very steady, almost like a Kevin Ball kind of player. Mm-hmm. Really good defensively, good stick, makes smart plays, but he's not going to be a game changer. So I think I got him at number 10, mainly just because of, like I said, I feel like he's essentially guaranteed to be an NHL player, and I think it's a very safe pick for a team to make.
He feels like a Nashville Predator at 10, doesn't he?
Yeah, I could totally see that. Like they got that, history of taking defensemen, pretty high up in their drafts, and had pretty, a lot of success with that. So yeah, I could see Nashville there for sure.
Yeah, interesting. I like that list. I like that a lot. I like Smith as well. If I were to keep going on my list, I'd probably have him at that 11 or 12 spot. I think he is probably the most NHL-ready defenseman on the board early in this draft, and I think that'll help propel him to be picked early in this draft, because a team like a Predators or a Winnipeg Jets, teams that are trying to get back into the playoffs, might just take a swing on this guy because he is pretty much NHL ready now. Good frame, good body, good skill set. So I like that from you to round out your 10
yeah,
spot there.
I think you are bang on with that. We're about to do like a little mock draft here, like just a quick top 10 mock draft. And, basically what you just said, like I have Smits going pretty high because of the fact that he can play in the NHL next year. And I think a lot of hockey teams out there, they're going to put a lot of stock into that. So yeah, I think that's a really good shout out by you.
We did a mock 3 episodes ago, and I got the even numbers. You got the odd numbers. We're going to flip it this time around. We're going to kind of talk about what we think this top 10 is going to go like. Is there a surprise? Is there a trade in the works here? Does some team like Ottawa trade out of the top 10? Does Winnipeg make a move? Do the Flames move up? Those type of things, Robert. It's pretty easy to start off this mock draft in this top 10 by talking about Gavin McKenna. We've already done that. We both think he's going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. It's hard to think anyone else goes there other than Gavin McKenna, but I do want to pose something to you about the number 1 pick. The guy in charge there with John Chayka is Matt Sundin. He is a Swede. Any chance that you think that Ivor Stenberg squeezes in there over Gavin McKenna based on the fact of Swede on Swede?
Well, yeah, and Sundin was at the World Championships watching him, pretty closely too. So, yeah, it's an interesting question. Just based off the information that we've been told so far, like it does sound like the Leafs have essentially told McKenna that they're going to take him. So I don't see Stenberg going number 1 just because of what we've heard. But had that information not become public and it was kind of a secret as to who they were going to take, I could have totally seen a world where the Maple Leafs could have taken Stenberg because of the fact that, it seems like he's more pro ready right now than McKenna. Like it feels like Stenberg's first 3 or 4 years in the league might be a little more productive than Gavin's, but then once Gavin becomes a man and gets that kind of man strength and all that kind of stuff, I think he'll leapfrog Stenberg in terms of production and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think those two are very close. And if Toronto did end up taking Stenberg, I actually think it would be a really good pick. I don't think you could go wrong with either player. But I think it's a really fair question.
It would throw the draft off from the get-go, right? If they took Stenberg over McKenna, based on how people are doing this list, where it's pretty easy. You go around all these mock drafts, and it's McKenna, and then it's Reed, and then it's do the Canucks take Malhotra or Stenberg type of mock drafts you see all over the place. I still see them. New ones coming out today. They are the exact same way. And it's just quite an interesting conversation to have. And I just want to throw that all on the podcast, just have a different conversation. Because just saying Gavin McKenna goes 1 is pretty vanilla, even though I think that's what's going to happen. So we'll have McKenna go 1 on our list. Let's have that conversation at 2, Robert. At 2, where do you think San Jose goes here?
So I think that, okay, so I've been really thinking about this a lot lately, and I'd be curious to get your opinion on it. All we hear from draft experts and all we hear from the draft community is that, you have to take the best player available. Like that's always like the number 1 strategy. Yet when we look at all these mock drafts and we listen to conversations from people in the industry, they're all saying San Jose's got to go with a defenseman. They got to go with need. So like it just begs the question, what's the right strategy here for San Jose? Because if it's best player available, I think it's clearly Ivar Stenberg that they take. But if they go down the role route or the position route, I think it's a Carson Karls, a Chase Reed, a Keaton Verhoff type of player that they would be interested in. So the way I'm going is I think they should take the best player available because, like 5 years from now, you want to look at the draft board and say, like say they take Stenberg, best player available. You want to look at Stenberg compared to Reed, and you want to know that Stenberg's the more valuable asset. And then you can use some of the forward talent that they have in their organization already, along with draft picks to bring in a defenseman. So I think they should go best player available. I don't know if they will, but in my mock draft, I have Stenberg going to San Jose at 2 because he is the best player at that position, and I think he'll provide the most value to that franchise. And who knows? Like I said, 4 or 5 years from now, when maybe they are trying to turn into a cup contender, they can trade a Stenberg to bring in a really good established NHL defenseman and one who's already proved that they can play in the NHL and not just a lottery ticket. So that's the way I'm kind of looking at it. How about you?
I love that take. And I've been on this take as well. I think they do go Chase Reed or Carson Karls at that pick. I really do at the end of the day. But I think San Jose has an opportunity here to upgrade their top 6 by bringing in Stenberg. And they have lots of other guys they could use to make a move. William Eklund and a couple of other picks, they could net you a pretty good NHL defenseman that's helping you win now. They're kind of in that spot where they could draft a defenseman on Friday, but they're waiting 2 or 3 years for that defenseman to develop into a National Hockey League player. Or they could try to capitalize on last year's magic and almost making the playoffs by taking Stenberg, adding him into your mix, using a guy like an Eklund to go out and get yourself a young NHL defenseman right now. I think that should be on the table for Mike Greer. I think that should be a valid conversation, a more prominent conversation on social media as well. I think that's something that a lot of people are missing out on. It's an opportunity for San Jose to kind of get the best of both worlds. Like you go out there and you say, I don't have a defenseman in mind because I didn't do that much research on it, but there are defensemen out there they can go get to help make them an NHL ready back end right now. They still have good veterans back there. They have Ferraro. They still have Orlov for another season. So they have guys there. If they want to capitalize on last year's magic and almost making the playoffs, that almost might be the smarter play here. I don't think they need to keep accruing all of these assets. They're kind of in the let's start making the playoffs mode. And so going after best available in the draft, which for me is Stenberg at this point, and then trading for a defenseman might be the way to go here if you're Mike Reeder.
Yeah, because you're guaranteed. I think Stenberg is as close to a guarantee of an effective NHL player as you're going to find in this draft. I think he's like at his lowest form. I think he's at least like a 55 to 60 point winger, really good two-way player. Like that's kind of the basement for this player. So, and I feel like it's very boom or bust for some of the defensemen that they could take at this point. And like you look around the league, like what if an Adam Fox becomes available? Could you use some of your young talent to acquire Fox? Or what if, with Brady Tkachuk leaving Ottawa, what if Jake Sanderson, demands a trade out of Ottawa? And, is there the potential to make a deal for that? Like those types of players, especially in this new era of NHL hockey, they're going to become available. And I think San Jose would put themselves in a really good position to send the assets they need to make that deal happen if they take the best player available here, if that makes sense.
They could revisit the Dougie Hamilton trade. They could do a lot of different things when they bring it in. I think it just best available for me is always the best policy, right? Like that's just how I draft whenever I'm doing a draft here. So if we got McKenna gone at 1, Stenberg gone at 2, that puts Vancouver in an interesting spot. Do they go with the top center on the board and Caleb Malhotra, like a lot of people think is going to happen? Or do they tackle and go for the defenseman that's on the board? They'll have their pick of the litter if San Jose doesn't take a defenseman. So there's Reed on the board. There's Carroll's on the board. Verhoff's on the board. Are they the team that goes and gets Smits? They also got Caleb Malhotra sitting there or View Work sitting there. It's a lot of options at 3 for Vancouver. And for the sake of this mock draft, I'm going to stick with my list where I have my list of the best available for me then would be Caleb Malhotra. And I don't think that the son and the father head coach and rookie thing is that big of a deal, knowing how Manny Malhotra approaches how he plays and how he coaches. I think the utmost professionalism will happen there if that is the situation. So that does not scare me off. But for me at 3, I think I stick with my list and I go with Caleb Malhotra.
So yeah, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I have this feeling that Malhotra is not going to go there. And like David Pagnotta, who, he said in one of his most recent articles, he thinks that Malhotra will not be a Vancouver Canuck. And, you're starting to hear those kind of whispers a little bit more as we get closer to Friday. So, if Malhotra's not the guy there, I'm going to go Carson Karls. And
I like that.
I think the whole Western Canadian thing is going to play into this. A lot of people probably have Chase Reed at that position, but I wonder if this whole American thing and what they dealt with Quinn Hughes and now Brady leaving and Matthew leaving and, DeBrincat and Chikrin, all these Americans are starting to leave Canadian markets. I wonder if that's going to play a role in this pick. So I'll go, Carson Karls going to Vancouver. That's kind of like the first sort of wild card in this whole draft year.
I love it. I love that a lot. I like that call from you. I like that call. That David Pagnotta gets a lot of hate on social media for his takes, but he's actually pretty dialed in on a few things here, and I like his take there. I think Carroll's is a good bet for Western Canada teams. Like I think if he's there at 6, the Flames run to the podium type of thing for him as well. I like that call by you, Robert. I like the audible there. It's an interesting conversation to have. What do you make of the father-son conversation in Vancouver if Caleb does go to Vancouver? That's getting a lot of play on my social media feeds anyways of Manny and Caleb on the same team.
You know what? I don't think it's as big a deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. And it's for a reason where I don't know if I've heard anybody talk about this, but what's the shelf life of an NHL head coach these days, especially in Vancouver?
Like 2 years.
2, 3, if you hit 4 years with the Canucks, like you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So I see Manny Malhotra lasting, like I see him kind of being the rebuilding coach, and I see him lasting, at most 4 or 5 years, like at the very most. And if they select Caleb Malhotra, he might not be in the NHL lineup for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So, you might have to deal with the father-son relationship for maybe 2 or 3 seasons. And then after that, it's not really going to matter because, I think they'll probably end up finding a new head coach. That's just what happens in the NHL. So if the Canucks are comfortable with, 1 or 2 years of Manny coaching Caleb, then, you can make the pick and feel comfortable with it. But unless they think that Manny Malhotra is going to be like the next Brind'Amour or John Cooper, which, I mean, it could happen, but the percentage chance of that happening is very low. So I actually don't think it's as big of a deal, when you consider the long-term, future of Caleb in the organization.
Yeah, and this guy's, all due respect to Caleb, I don't believe he's NHL ready. So, like, good point by you on that as well. Interesting conversation to have. That brings us to number 4, and it's the Chicago Blackhawks. Let's just pretend Carols and Malhotra aren't on the board right now for Chicago, just to play it out a little bit. Do they feel like a Chase Reed spot for you, or are they the team that jumps and grabs Smits for you?
That's it. Bang on. I'm going bold here. And I think Chicago shocks the draft and they pull, a Detroit with Moritz Seider from 2019, where they take a guy who's ranked, anywhere from 9 to 14, and they go big and they swing on him higher up in the draft. And yeah, I'll go Chicago. Takes Albert Smits, 4th overall, mainly because, one, he's a left shot. They already have Lev Shunov and Sam Renzel on the right side, so they definitely need a left shot defenseman. They're the type of team who really wants to take that next step and try to get close to playoff contention. Smits can probably step into their lineup right away and help. And, Lev Shunov and Renzel, they don't seem like the, typical like shutdown, like legit first pairing guys. And I think Smits could be that player if he pans out. But at worst, he's like a second pair defensive shutdown guy, which Chicago desperately needs. So I think they'll kind of lean with the need on defense and go with Smits at 4. And that just that shocks everybody in the hockey world.
Love it. I love it so much. I'm going to play in the world where the Canucks did your thing. They took Carols and Malhotra's still sitting there. And that conversation becomes Smits or Malhotra for Chicago Blackhawks. Does Malhotra fit for you in Chicago? Does he add to a Bedard and Malhotra 1-2 punch down the middle, and then you're free to use other guys other places like Nazar to the wing type situation? Does that have any play for you? Because I think that is a very interesting conversation if the Canucks go defenseman at 3.
Personally, I think that the big time need in Chicago is defense, because they already have Bedard, they have Nazar, they have Oliver Moore, they have Anton Frundell, they have all these guys that can play down the middle of the ice already. They have Riley Green, who I think could play down the middle of the ice in like a third line role. So I think they're already stacked up front when it comes to their forwards, and especially down the middle. So I don't think Malhotra makes a ton of sense for them, but that's just me.
I like it. I like that call by you. I had to do the devil's advocate there because that conversation should be very real. I wonder how Chicago's thinking, because if it comes down to Smits or Malhotra for them or Chase Reed, I think that's a very interesting conversation in their boardroom. That takes us to the New York Rangers at 5, and that puts a lot of bodies on the board for the Rangers to pick from. It's Malhotra, it's Reed, it's Verhoff, it's Bjork on the table potentially there, depending on what you think of other guys could be on the table there. What are the needs of the Rangers? Because I look at that roster and I'm like, well, if they're going to get rid of Trocheck, they might need a center. But then who's available on the back end? We've heard rumors that there could be guys available on the back end, like a Brendan Schneider. Where, if you're Drury, do you address the Rangers here? Because this kind of feels like the Malhotra spot for me.
Well, they need everything. They're one of those teams where it's obvious best player available is the way to go. And at 5th overall, I have them taking Chase Reed. He feels like a New York Ranger to me, just like a highly skilled American defenseman. Even just the name, Chase Reed, like, I don't know, it just sounds like a New York Ranger to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of a silly comment, but I don't know. It's just kind of what I thought of. But like I said, they got to go best player available here. they need help wherever they can get it, and I think Chase Reed makes a lot of sense for them.
And a lot of Chase Reed fans are looking at their phones going, finally, these idiots are taking Chase Reed off the board at number 5 for the Rangers. I like that. If that's how it falls, and we go by how Robert's laying it out here, the pick for the Flames at 6 becomes a very, very interesting conversation. There's still Malhotra on the board. A fan favorite in Bjork's on the board. My personal indication favorite of Verhoff is on the board at number 6, and opens up a lot of avenues for the Flames to make at pick 6 here. If you go with the other situation where I have Malhotra off the board, that leaves Carroll's and Verhoff and Bjork on the board for the Flames. How do you see this playing out, Robert? Because I watched that interview on Barn Burner on Friday, and the body language of Craig Conroy was a little bit more perky around the name of Keaton Verhoff and the way he was talking about the big defenseman and how he plays the game versus the other names that he was asked about. Is this a Keaton Verhoff or bust situation at 6 for you for the Flames?
Well, on my list, so based off my top 5, because Smits went 4, that means that Malhotra is available at 6. And, I think if it were to come down to Malhotra or Verhoff, I could see the Flames going Malhotra. I could see them taking the center.
Me too.
I could see them, taking, he's got the pedigree, the family roots with his dad. He's, like I said, I really believe that he could be a solid, second line center, or kind of a 1A, 1B type of center. And if you go Reshny Malhotra, or the other way around down the middle, I think your future is looking pretty bright if you're the Flames. And at that spot, number 6, it's tough. You could flip a coin between those two players, but I'll say the Flames take the center. I think the center's the bigger positional need. And yeah, I'll go. I don't know if this will happen, but I'll go Malhotra at 6 to Calgary. Do you think that's even possible that Malhotra makes it to number 6?
I don't, but I like your thinking of why he could fall to 6 on the list. I really have a hard time seeing him get by the Rangers and by Vancouver, by both those teams. The needs of those teams out there and what he is positional is just something that every NHL team covets. We know it here in Calgary with the Flames, like finding a good top 6 center is not an easy task. And if you don't have one, you just spend all your time, money, and energy trying to find one. And so to pass on a guy who could potentially be a really good 1B, number 2 line center, maybe even a 1 center in situations, it's hard to pass that type of player up. But go on the flip side of that same conversation, the Smits thing makes sense for Chicago. The Carrolls thing makes sense for Vancouver. And all those situations, they do make sense. And so it's really, what does a team value more versus what they have in their system? And in Calgary, when you're talking center or defenseman, they've got guys on the back end. They've got Brestevich and Perek, and we've seen the emergence of Kuznetsov, and Kevin Ball is steady. White Cloud's still around. Does a center, if he's available, he does make a ton more sense for the Flames and for the positional needs. And if any organization out there knows what it's like to go without good centers, just ask Jerome McGinley what his career was like playing. No disrespect to Damon Lakehouse, Craig Conroy, and those guys, but there's a far cry from having a good top 6 center and having a no doubt guy that could be your number 1 guy. So interesting conversation. I don't think he does get to 6, but if he does, I would absolutely love if the Flames took him at 6, because I think, based on all my reading and understanding, it really looks like a Keaton Verhoff or bust situation, unless a wrinkle like this is thrown in the Flames' lap.
Yeah, I could just see that. I feel like it's guaranteed that it will be McKenna, Stenberg, Reed, and Carrolls. I could see those 4 going in the top 5 in whatever order you see happening. And then I think it can get a little crazy there, whether it's Malhotra, whether it's a team like Smits, or they like Verhoff, or even Bjork. I've seen some prospect analysts have Bjork in their top 5. So I just think at that 5 spot, between 5 to 10, I could see it just going a whole bunch of different ways. So I thought I'd maybe have a little bit of fun and maybe change it up a little bit. But I do see a world where, a Chicago or a New York or even Vancouver, they kind of reach and they go for a Verhoff, or they go for a Smits, or they go for a Carson Carls. Like, I could see something like that happening. And Yeah, based off information we've heard recently, it does sound like Malhotra might not go 3 to Vancouver, and that might just kind of throw the whole draft kind of in whack here. So yeah, the percentage chance of it happening is probably pretty low, but it's not zero. But realistically, I'm with you. I do think Verhoff will probably be the guy for Calgary, unless the team, like I said, reaches for him. But for fun, I'll go Malhotra to Calgary, and I think it'd be a great fit.
And for fun, let's back up a quick second here. Let's just say 1, 2, 3 goes McKenna, Stenberg, and Carls. Chicago sitting there at 4. Do the Flames make a call, or would you, as a general manager, make a call to Chicago for that number 4 pick, knowing Malhotra, Reed, Verhoff are all still on the board? And if they go, and if they're thinking Smits, would they be willing to trade that pick? What do you make of a potential move with Chicago at 4 if that top 3 is McKenna, Stenberg, and Carroll's?
Then I don't do it. I just feel like the players who would be in the mix for Calgary at that spot would probably be like Malhotra, Verhoff, Bjork, Chase Reed, Carroll's. Like any one of those 5 players will probably be available to the Flames at pick 6, and I feel like they're all in kind of the same group in terms of value. So I wouldn't sacrifice a bunch of picks and NHL players to move up to take one of those guys. I would just wait at 6 and see who falls to you. But if Stenberg somehow fell, like if San Jose goes a defense route and Vancouver goes Malhotra, for example, then if Stenberg's available at 4, then you definitely call Chicago and you see what it takes to do it. Because I do think he's a guaranteed, like almost star level player who's going to be in the NHL. But yeah, Stenberg's gone by then no, I wouldn't do it. How about you?
Yeah, I would need one of those top 2 guys to fall for me to do it. Even if Chase Reed falls to 4, I'm not doing it. Even if Malhotra falls to 4, I don't think I do it either. It's got to be one of those top 2 guys for me to move up, because you just mentioned it there. You list off the next guys, the Malhotra, Carroll's, Verhoff, that group of players there. One of them is bound to fall to you, and you've got to like your chances of getting a very good NHL player at that point, because I don't think there's a ton of difference between getting Malhotra versus getting a Carlson Carroll's at 6 or a Verhoff at 6. Different positions, obviously, but other than that, it doesn't move the needle for me. I would need McKenna or Stenberg to drop to 4 for me to do that. So just a little bit of fun in there. And I think these next 3 picks all have the potential to be just that, Robert, to be wild cards, to be trade chips, to be potentially moved, depending what Seattle wants to do at 7, Winnipeg at 8, and of course Ottawa at 9 after the Brady Tkachuk trade. I don't think they're picking that pick. I think that's being traded for an NHLer. But let's back to up to 7 here. Is Seattle for you a trade chip? Do they feel like a team to trade out there, or do they have is there a player there that you think nails what the Kraken are after?
Yeah, if there's a star level player who's under contract and who's actually willing to go to Seattle, then I would definitely shop the pick if I were them. That's going to be tough to do though. I mean, finding a player that meets all that criteria.
Yeah.
So if they do end up keeping the pick at 7th, I think Keaton Verhoff, like on my list, makes a lot of sense for them. They've picked a lot of forwards in the first round, whether it's Beniers, Wright, Berkeley Catton, Jake O'Brien. Like they picked high forwards quite a bit, and I think it's time that they need to add to that defense group. So a guy like Verhoff, who might be available at that spot, I think makes a lot of sense for Seattle there.
I think it's time for Seattle to be bold as well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I know they're trying to shop.
Ever.
I think they're trying to shop away Shane Wright as well. I think if you can use 7 and Shane Wright in different trades or the same trade and go make a splash somewhere, I think it would behoove the Kraken to do something like that. That market is quickly going to start fading on the Kraken with rumors of the NBA going back and the Seahawks just winning a championship. The Mariners are always a big ticket in Seattle. They've got to do something to kind of ignite that fan base a little bit more, because they've been pretty mediocre other than that one lucky series they had against the Avalanche in the playoffs a few years ago. They've been a pretty mediocre franchise that haven't done a lot. They've been pretty plain Jane. Ron Francis did not do a great job running that team, and I think Botterill needs to step up here and do something for the Kraken. If they stay in pick at 7, I won't be surprised either because that's been the Seattle Kraken way of doing things. I do like Verhoff for them. I also think Vigo Bork is a guy that fits what they're trying to do there, and he could be a sneaky player there as well. And then I wonder if that's also, and I know you're high on this guy, I wonder if a Daxton Rudolph tickles their fancy at all as well at the number 7 spot. Just as a few other names that potentially can go there. But I do like your call of Verhoff. Winnipeg at 8 is also an interesting one. I think Winnipeg and Ottawa with 8 and 9 here, I think if they pick these picks, it's almost going to be disappointing for those fan bases. I think these fan bases are hungry for their team to do something, to revitalize something. I know Winnipeg was very disappointed in the last season and where they ended up. They thought they were a way better team than they actually showed last year. They've got the Hellebuck rumors out there now. What do you see happening in Winnipeg, Robert? Because this one could go a lot of different directions as well.
So yeah, I got Daxton Rudolph going to Winnipeg.
I like that.
He's a Western Canadian kid. He played in Prince Albert in Saskatchewan. Like he's kind of used to playing hockey in Western Canada, and I do think that matters for a team like the Winnipeg Jets. You know, like I was in Winnipeg the other weekend, and like there are nice parts of Winnipeg, don't get me wrong, but like it's not a destination city to say the least. So I do think they need to make those picks where it's like it's a good stylistic fit both on and off the ice for these players. So I like the idea of a Daxton Rudolph going to Winnipeg. However, I will say based off of what they want to be, which is a playoff team, and they need to get a whole lot better if they're going to get back to being a good playoff team. I would shop this pick if I were them. And I would look to add depth. Like I would look to add multiple middle 6 forwards and a top 4 defenseman for this pick. And this would be the spot where if I'm the Flames, I would throw a lot at Winnipeg to try and make a deal. Like if it means 4 roster players and a draft pick or something like that, I would be all over it, because if a Rudolph is available here, or Verhoff is available here, or Bjork's available here, I think that's the type of player that you want to take a swing on. So, you know, if I'm the Flames, I'm throwing a guy like White Cloud at them to be in their top 4. I'm throwing Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee at them. You know, that's basically a whole new third line for them, or could even be a second line for them. Like Winnipeg needs NHL players badly, and they're not going to find them in free agency because players don't really want to go there. And I think the only way they're going to be able to do this is through a trade. So if I'm Winnipeg, I'm absolutely trading this pick. But if they don't trade it, then I have Daxton Rudolph going there.
Yeah, and I think if a team like Calgary's trying to move back up into that top 10, this 8th spot's a good spot to do it because of what Winnipeg is probably looking for. They're looking for those second line guys, third line guys, some depth guys, a defenseman. They're looking for the players that the Flames would have to offer in a trade, and the Flames have that draft capital to do it. If they stay and pick at number 8, I would be disappointed if I was a Winnipeg Jet fan, because that's not what you're trying to do. You're not trying to pick high in drafts. You're trying to get back to the playoffs. And yes, you're in a very tough division, but there's the wild card spots are there for the taking as well. Because let's be honest, Pacific Division's a tire fire, and the options are there. The chances are there for Winnipeg if they could put it together. They do have, and they need to show that Connor Hellebuck is. They're doing something for Connor Hell. Hey, we can win in Winnipeg here, Connor. Give us another year to try to do this. We've seeing a lot of, and it's a big conversation on social media right now, of American players not wanting to be in Canada. Well, one way Winnipeg can show that they're a place to play is by putting a winning team on the ice. I don't think this Winnipeg team can afford to go through a big rebuild at this time, especially with those players on their board here. So be bold if you're Winnipeg.
I think that they're one of the most interesting teams to watch this offseason.
Yep.
Because, like, you know, you take a look at the roster, and I like the core group, you know, whether it's Mark Scheifele, Gabe Velarde, and Kyle Connor up front. I think that's like a really, really strong trio, but you have to add to that. And then on defense, you know, I really like guys like Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk, Dylan Sandberg. Like, I think those guys are all legit top 4 defensemen, but you need another guy there too. And I like I said, I just think depth is just the big time issue there. And once again, like I think if Calgary threw Farabee, Frost, White Cloud, and maybe a pick at them, you know, that solves their need at second line up front. It solves their need for a right shot defenseman on the back end to fill in their top 4. all of a sudden, and then, Winnipeg goes out and makes another trade. All of a sudden, like, they've completely changed their team. And I think they're right back in the mix for, being probably a wild card team. I don't know if they can get to the top 3 spots in their division, but all of a sudden, I just think that like changes the whole course of your team there. And it's like you said, it's time for them to be bold. We were talking about how Seattle needs to be bold. Winnipeg needs to be bold here, big time, and take advantage of this contention window with Connor, Scheifele, Morrissey, Velarde, like those guys. So yeah, I think that type of deal makes so much sense for the Jets here.
And after that pick at number 8, they don't have another pick till 71 in the draft. So if they're going to do something, it's got to be with that pick. It's got to be with pick 8. Move it around, find some pieces. I know we'll keep giving the Flames example because we're a Flame podcast, and that would be perfect for the Flames to get pick 6 and 8. That'd be awesome here in Calgary. But for Winnipeg, they've got to do something here. They got to show these guys that they're going to put a winning team on the ice. A team that's very similar in that spot is Ottawa. They took the steps forward. They made the playoffs. They got manhandled by Carolina, but they made the playoffs and they started showing the promise that a lot of people thought the Senators were going to be. And then they were hit with this Brady Tkachuk trade out of Ottawa here. Pick 9. Do you even see Ottawa stepping to the podium to pick at pick 9? Or is this no doubt being moved for a veteran NHLer for me? Because that's what it looks like for me. This is going to turn into an NHL player of some sort rather than a draft pick for Ottawa. I think somebody else is picking at number 9. That's not going to be the Senators. I don't know who that player is for Ottawa. But there's no doubt that Steve Staios has to do something here at 9 for Ottawa.
I agree. I think they would be crazy to hold on to this pick. I think they should do everything in their power to move it for a legit top-line winger. The guy that comes to mind for me is someone like a Jordan Kyrou. The Blues are, we were talking about it today over text. Yep. Like, what the hell are the Blues doing?
Yeah.
So maybe take advantage of them and say, if you want to get off Kyrou's contract, like, we'll give you pick 9 and maybe something else. And then the Blues, then all of a sudden they have 4 first-round picks here. Can they maybe move up and take a difference maker? Like, all of a sudden it opens up doors for the Blues. It opens up, a guy who can probably put up anywhere between 65 to 80 points to the Senators to replace the production of Brady. And like a deal like that would make a lot of sense for Ottawa. But, if they do end up selecting, I know like Albert Smits is off my board in our mock draft here, but if he's available at pick 9, I think something like that would make sense for Ottawa because he's a guy that could help now. But for the sake of our mock draft and where I'm at on my board, I'll have the Senators taking Vigo Bjork at pick 9. Just, I know they have like some pretty good depth down the middle, but this is one of those things where it's like best player available. And
yes,
you can move a Shane Pinto or you can move a Dylan Cousins to the wing. You can move Stützle to the wing if you really need to, or you could put Bjork to the wing. Like, it gives them a lot of options. So yeah, I got Bjork going to Ottawa at pick 9, but like I said, I think Ottawa should absolutely look to move that because they're in win now mode 100% with Sanderson signed to the deal that he's on, with Stützle signed to the deal that he's on, and then a whole bunch of really good supporting pieces around them. Like I think Shane Pinto is one of the most underrated centers in the league. Dylan Cousins is a really nice player. Like, add to that group and try to keep this going. So yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, and Steve Staios said that. He's like, this is not a step back for his organization. He doesn't want to take a step back for the Senators. He wants to build on the momentum they had from last year. And you do that by bringing in an NHLer. And if they do draft, I do like Vigo Bjork there for them. I think he fits what Ottawa does. And I think he could play very well with a guy like Timmy Stützle. I think those two together would be very dynamic to watch. Ottawa, very much on the board. This bottom part of the top 10, Robert, really feels like a lot of moving pieces with Seattle, with Winnipeg, with Ottawa, and then whatever the Nashville Predators decide to do at number 10. This is another team where I think they're trying to be a playoff team rather than a rebuild team. I wonder if they're looking to move out at number 10 here because that's a organization that I also, too, do not know what Nashville's trying to do. Like, what are they actually? They have a lot of older players there. They got some interesting younger players like a Matthew Wood coming through there as well. What do you think the Predators do here at number 10? Is this just a pick it and take it type of thing? Or do you think this one's also available to be moved?
I agree with you. Like, I have no idea what the Predators are doing. And
pick a direction.
Now that McFarland's there as their GM, maybe they will pick a direction. And I don't know if the Ross Colton trade is a sign that they're going to try and go for it this year. maybe it is, and maybe they do look to trade it. But if they don't trade that pick, and we're sticking with our mock draft here, I have them taking Tynan Lawrence at number 10. I just think the upside and the idea of a speedy center makes a lot of sense for the Predators, who they've really struggled to find centers in that organization. Like, we think it's bad in Calgary, like it's worse in Nashville. So yeah, I think they need to take a swing on a center with some upside, and I think pick 10 would be a good spot for them to do it. But wouldn't surprise me if they tried to trade that pick too, because yeah, them in St. Louis. There's a couple other teams they're just totally directionless right now, and I have no idea what they're doing.
I got two things with the Predators I want to bring up. One, I think at pick 10, if they pick it, I think a Wyatt Cullen is a perfect fit for Nashville and what they're trying to do there. I think he fits there. He would be my guy for them. I do like the Tynan Lawrence call by you. And on the other side, because of who their general manager is, and you look at the trade market, and you look at the one name out there that a lot of people, including some people in Calgary, are looking at, do the Nashville Predators with pick 10, do they make sense to go out and try to make a trade for Bo and Byram?
Yeah. I mean, if their goal is to get back in the mix and try and be a playoff team, then that's the kind of player they should absolutely look at bringing in 100%. I think that makes a lot of sense for sure.
So there you guys have it. There are our top 10 players we both have ranked. That's a nice mock top 10 with a lot of different scenarios. I think the way that we're talking through this, Robert, really speaks to what this draft is. I think there's a lot of balls in the air that can go a lot of different directions, with a few teams that what are you actually trying to do here, and a couple of teams that really should not pick in the top 10 and could be moving out. This top 10 on Friday is going to be an absolute fascinating to watch, Robert, and how it shapes down. Because after pick 1 at McKenna, I could really see it going about 1,000 different ways. What about you?
Oh, me too. Yeah, I think after McKenna, it's a complete wild card. Like, we know Stenberg will go at least in the top 4. Like, he's not getting to 5, but outside of that, like, it could really go a whole bunch of different directions. And just to like kind of go back, so I want to hear your mock draft here, because we were kind of going back and forth there. But so my mock draft here is Gavin McKenna 1, Stenberg to San Jose at 2, Carlos to Vancouver at 3, Smits to Chicago at 4. I know a lot of people think I'm crazy for that one, but just I love it. There. Chase Reed to New York at 5, Caleb Malhotra to Calgary at 6, Keaton Verhoff to Seattle at 7, Daxon Rudolph to Winnipeg at 8, Vigo Bjork to Ottawa at 9, and then Tynan Lawrence to Nashville at 10. That's my mock draft. And what was yours again?
So I had McKenna, and then I went with the norm because I think it's going to happen. So I got Chase Reed going to San Jose. I do have Malhotra to Vancouver. I have Carroll's going to Chicago. Sorry, not to Chicago. That's at 5 to the Rain. I can't even read my own writing here. Sorry. I have Stenberg going to Chicago. I have Carroll's going to the Rangers. I have Verhoff going to the Flames at 6, and then I stopped writing because we had a good conversation going. But the Smits, the Bjorks, the Lawrence, the Daxon Rudolph, those guys surrounding out that top 4, because those bottom 4 teams for me as well in this the Seattle, Winnipeg, Ottawa, and Nashville. None of those teams could be picking those picks for me as well. So it really changes who is drafted in what spot for me based on different trades that are happening there. But I think when it comes to this draft, you've got your top 6 guys, 7 guys here that are pretty much going to go in any one of those orders we have there. And then it's a lot of different options here. Could Smits go as high as 4, like you mentioned? Could he go as low as 14 on some lists? So it'd be very interesting how it happens. So for me, I didn't finish my mock because of that factor, the trade factor that's out there. If you go based on my list of my top 10 players, it was Bjork, Rudolph, Lawrence, and Cullen, my bottom 4 guys there. So a lot of different ways this draft could go here, Robert.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think this is one of the most exciting drafts that we're going to have in a long time in terms of unpredictability and potential movement of picks. Like I think we're in for a really interesting few days here. It's so wild that we have only gotten through two of our topics on our rundown, and we have about 4 more to go. We're going to save some of those for next week on the podcast as we react to the draft. But before we sign off here, Robert, is there any prospects out there that you absolutely want to see the Flames trade for? We're not talking about drafting. We're talking about
trade. We talked last week on this podcast about a few young centers, the Kent Johnsons and so on and so forth. Is there a player out there that you have your eye on that the Flames should target and go out and that fits what the Flames are trying to do here?
Yeah, so if they can somehow move into the top 10 for a second pick, I have guys that they should target as Daxon Rudolph and Vigo Bjork if they're available at that spot. I think those are two guys that if you can walk away with two of, Verhoff or Bjork or Rudolph and Bjork or Malhotra and Rudolph, that type of combination, I think you'd be absolutely thrilled. And then, if they want to get back into, we'll call it around pick 15 to pick 24, a couple guys that I would have a lot of interest in is one is Mathis Preston. I think he's one of those guys where you're taking a home run swing on him. The skill is out of control. Really good skater, really dynamic player. He's the type of guy I'd want to take a swing on there. And then the other guy is Nikita Klepov, who led the OHL in scoring as a rookie. And the last player to do that was Patrick Kane. He had a historic season in the OHL. And once again, similar to Preston, highly skilled. You'd be taking a swing on him, and there is potential for him to be a top 6 player in the NHL one day. So yeah, if they could somehow move into pick 15 to 24 and Klepov or Preston are available, I would have a lot of interest in those two guys.
I like that. I like both those names. I like your reasoning for them as well. I have a guy that I find no one's talking about. I've heard one conversation in the sporting world about this guy, and that's JP Hurlburt. He played for Kamloops this year in the WHL. He is an American guy, so it's going to turn some people off based on the landscape of the NHL right now, but a young player who I think fits in that 15 to 20 range of the draft, and a guy that you could play and count on his skill just to figure out the NHL at his pace here, because I think he had a really good season in Kamloops where he really blossomed as a player, and he's committed now to college for next year. And I think that's a good route for him to take in his development. And it's going to probably be a 2 or 3 year process for him to get to the next level. But JP Hurlburt for me is an interesting prospect. And I think the way that he approached the game in Kamloops and the growth he showed there for the Blazers really makes him an interesting selection in the draft for the Flames here. I'm sorry, just trying to pull up his numbers. Yeah, so 97 points. I thought it was 96 points. It's 97 points in 68 games for Kamloops in his rookies as a rookie for the Kamloops Blazers in the dub, and committed to Michigan next year. That's a really stacked Michigan team, so that'll be interesting how that plays out for him. So he's my guy that I would target in that mid round pick. And then the other guy that I like in the early 20s, and I've getting a lot of pushback on social media about Jack Hextall. He doesn't play top 6. He doesn't do this. He's just a power play guy. Well, you're not going to find a no doubt number 1 stud at pick 30 if you are the Flames. You're going to find yourself a player that you hope can turn into a National Hockey League player. And I think Jack Hextall fits the Craig Conroy mold of a center. He does shoot right. He's good on the power play, good offensive skill, good IQ. And I think that he could fit in what the Flames are trying to build, especially down the middle. And hey, at the end of the day, if he becomes a right winger rather than a center, I think that also is a win for the Flames based on what they need in their organization. So those are two names that I have in the same area there, Robert.
I like those names too. And the thing I like about Hextall is he does feel like a guy that has a high floor. Even if he doesn't pan out to be like your top 6 offensive center, he has the potential to be that kind of third line shutdown center.
He's your next Backlund.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good comparison. So yeah, I like those picks.
I had a guy on social media who's like, that's not going to happen. The Flames aren't going to draft that. And he goes off on the reasonings of those exact reasons. Well, he's only a bottom 6 guy. I'm like, last time I checked, you have 4 lines in the National Hockey League as well. And so you do need players that can play in that bottom 6, in that third line role. You do need penalty killers. You do need power play guys. So I think Jack Hextall is a very versatile player, and his role in the National Hockey League will need to be a defined role, but I think he'll be a very good player for someone in the National Hockey League, and I would be a big fan if the Flames took him around that 23, 24 mark if they can move up there. Where am I? My rundown here, Robert. A lot of draft talk, a lot of talking about getting prospects, a lot of talking about maybe moving back up into the draft. But outside of the draft itself, Robert, how busy of a week do we expect the Flames to have here, especially trade-wise. There's a lot of rumors out there. I'm sure they're getting calls on Zach Whitecloud again. I'm sure the Blake Coleman conversations are being had. Probably Morgan Frost conversations we had. What's Connor Zary for the Flames' future in his Flames' future here? How busy are you expecting this week to be Flames-wise on the trade market? Because I think the way that we've been talking about this Flames team and the moves and what Connor's been doing, I think we could be in for a busy, rumored week for the Flames. I don't know if we're going to get a lot of deals, but I think we're going to have a busy week here.
So I'm a little conflicted on this because it feels like a lot of teams are going to go out big game hunting, and the Flames they just don't have the pieces to be part of that. They don't have the Jason.
But Sharon Govich.
Oh God. Don't even get me started here. Hey, if they could somehow move off Sharon Govich, I'll go to the Saddle Dome and I'll bow to Craig Conroy, and I'll praise Craig Conroy if he can get rid of that contract.
We're gonna stream that live if that happens.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
But they don't have the Jason Robertson, they don't have the Jordan Kyrou or Robert Thomas or Dylan Larkin. They can't keep up in those types of trades. But if I could see the Flames being busy if teams miss out on those players. And they're like, okay, what are our secondary options here? Then maybe they come to Calgary and then they go after a Blake Coleman or, a Morgan Frost player if the Flames even want to trade him, or a Whitecloud if they're open to moving him. Maybe they get involved there. But what I see happening is I think Craig Conroy is going to do everything in his power to make a splash. And whether that's moving back into the top 10 to take 2 players there, or it's moving, into the middle round of the draft to take a swing on somebody, or maybe going after the Rucks or, whatever it may be. I do think he's going to try to make things happen. Will he be able to get the job done? I don't know, just because of, like I said, the Flames just don't have the high-end elite pieces to move right now. They traded a lot of those guys at the deadline. So if I had to make an official prediction, I do think Conroy will end up making one move, and I think he'll package some of those second round picks to move up, in that 20 to 30 or 20 to 29 range, and take somebody who they have in the top 15 of their own draft board. So I could see a move like that happening, but anything earth shattering, like moving back into the top 10 or moving out 3 or 4 NHLers, I just don't see that happening. But I do think Conroy will do everything in his power to try and do something here. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's going to be busy for sure. I think it's going to be a lot of phone calls. He's mentioned that on Barn Burner, where he's got a lot on the table, a lot on the cooker going. And I think it's a sensible take that you just had there, Robert. And I'll put a sensible take out there. I don't think the Flames are picking at 30. I think that gets moved up a little bit with maybe one roster player and another second rounder to move up 5 or 6 spots to get a player that they target, like the players we just mentioned on the podcast here. I think those are the sensible moves we're going to see. I'd be surprised if we see the Flames move Whitecloud and Coleman around this weekend's draft. I'd be very surprised if more than one veteran is moved, if any at all. And I'd be surprised if they bring anybody in other than draft pick wise. I really do. I think this is going to be a lot of testing the waters and prepping yourself for the season ahead. You got trade chips that closer to the trade deadline might be a lot more valuable than they are right now in Zach Whitecloud, in Blake Coleman, possibly Morgan Frost, maybe a Joel Farabee, depending what people are looking for. Devin Cooley, maybe, who knows? And I think that this is a lot of legwork around this will also help Conroy set up for free agency, where if a team misses out on player X they're trying to sign in free agency, they circle around to Calgary because they know they have a player similar that they can make a trade for. So I think a lot of legwork will be done this week. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of actual physical trades and moves, but no doubt Craig Conroy is going to need to have himself a charger close and handy for those phones he's got working there, because it's a great week and it's a lot on the table for a lot of NHL general managers. And I could not be more excited for what this week is going to behold, and more excited for what Friday will have in store for us, Robert.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just the more I think about it, the more I think Winnipeg is literally the perfect trade partner for Calgary. And I don't know if the Flames, if they're willing to move off guys like Frost and Farabee and Whitecloud, like those types of players, because you take those guys away and all of a sudden, you are truly by far and away the worst team in the NHL. I actually think the roster would be considerably worse than Vancouver. If they move out, 3 players of that caliber, and then they'd move out Blake Coleman on top of that at some point. Like, then you're really talking about being by far the worst team in the NHL, and the Flames organization has never been comfortable with that idea. So I don't know if they have the balls to trade those kinds of players, but if a number 8 pick is there and you can move out guys who only have 1 or 2 years left on their contracts, I think it's something that you seriously should consider. And once again, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's something they should definitely be open to, 100% in my opinion.
And overpaid to do it as well, if that's on the table, right? Add another third rounder in there, add a second, add another piece in there if you have to do it to get it going. Because if the Flames walk out of this draft and just throw 2 names out there that you like, Vigo Bork and Keaton Verhoff, if they walk out of the draft with those 2 guys, I don't care what the rest of the draft looks like, because you've done something, you've made a splash, and you've made your mark on the future of your organization. Do something bold is what I really hope Craig Conroy does. I know it's sexy to talk about that kind of stuff, and it rarely ever happens. We don't see top 10 picks move all that often, especially top 5 picks move. But if you have the right package and you have the opportunity to do it, add the extra pick in there just to get it done. Just do it. And I've mentioned it more than once, if the Flames leave the draft this weekend with just picking 11 players, it'll be kind of a disappointment. I'm looking for the splash. It doesn't need to be this over the top. We got pick 1 splash, but do everything in your power here to capitalize on the opportunity in front of you. If you're Craig Conroy, you have teams willing to trade and listening to offers, and you've got the draft capital to do so. So let's see what he does this week. It's gonna be a lot of fun, Robert. I'm very excited to see what Conroy can cook up at the draft this year.
Just one last piece of news here.
Yes, sir.
So they announced the 2026 Hall of Fame class.
Yes, they did.
Patrice Bergeron, Carey Price, Pekka Rinne, Keith Tkachuk, Cindy Curley, and Brian Burke as a builder. What are what are your initial thoughts on that class?
There's 0 surprises really on that list for me. I like it. It's about time Tkachuk got in there. The timing of that news and his son getting traded is kind of interesting. But I think these are all deserving players. I think that it's no doubt that Bergeron should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, the career that he had. It's about time Burke got some recognition from the National Hockey League. Curley is a great player on the women's side of the game. She did a lot for the game. I think Pekka Rinne, the best player in Nashville Predators history. I'm not going to apologize for that take. And Carey Price, I think for a few seasons in a row there, Carey Price winning a Vezina and a Hart, was the best player in the National Hockey League for a few seasons. Definitely the best goaltender in the world and very deserving of the honor. I don't think we're saying, hey, there's no one. I know people are going to be up in arms that Brind'Amour has not in yet, and I think he'll get in. But you can't argue with the 6 they did pick to get in. Sure, I like that class.
Yeah, I think it's decent. I mean, you start with Carey Price. He was literally the best goalie of his generation.
He's the best player for like 3 years there. Like, that guy was incredible.
Yeah, he won a Hart Trophy. So, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Bergeron, obvious first ballot Hall of Famer. You can't question that. The Tkachuk one is interesting. That feels like there's a little bit of recency bias going on there because his boys have been in the news a lot over the past couple years. There's been a little bit of an outcry from American hockey fans that Keith Tkachuk needs to be in there. So, I don't know. He's kind of the one guy who I'm a little iffy on, to be totally honest.
Fair enough.
But like, he's had a good career. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, really good career. I think he's one of very few American players to score 500 goals. So, really solid career. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's a decent class. I'm happy Brian Burke's getting in. Just all the work he's done with multiple NHL teams and then the league office itself. Like he's done a ton of great work in the community, and he's worked with like the PWHL recently. Like he's a hockey lifer. He totally deserves to be there as well. Just quick question for you here about the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yep.
One guy who I think's kind of got looked over a little bit recently is Ryan Getzlaf. Do you think Ryan Getzlaf should be a Hockey Hall of Famer?
Thank goodness for not saying Theo Fleury, by the way.
We don't need to spark that conversation on the podcast.
Ryan Getzlaf. What? My question about Ryan Getzlaf, and I'm looking it up as we talk here. What's his personal accolades?
Stanley Cup champ, World Junior champ, part of the greatest World Junior hockey team ever assembled. He's won at World Championships. He's won Olympic gold medals. He's won everywhere he's gone. And I think of that era of hockey from, we'll call it 2007 to 2017, that 10-year era, I thought he was one of the most dominant forces on the ice. Like, just the size, the competitiveness, the skill, the playmaking. Like, he was just that jack of all trades, dominant player year after year after year. And those Anaheim Duck teams were really good. Like, they were unfortunate to only win one Stanley Cup. Like, from 2013 to 2018, like, that team probably should have won a cup. And Getzlaf was just a massive part of that. And I'm a little biased. I'm a huge fan of his. I just thought like he was a dominant force in the NHL for a really long time, and he's won everything that you can pretty much win. So it's one guy who I think actually has a really strong case to be in the Hall of Fame.
I like Getzlaf. He never won any personal accolades out there. He got nominated for awards, but never won anything personally wise. His team success is no doubt, right? Like you just mentioned it all there. For his career, he's got over 1,000 points in over 1,100 games played. Like he's got a lot of good numbers there. I wonder if this is a prime candidate, and I appreciate your love of Getzlaf, of the Hall of very, very good, but not quite yet for Ryan Getzlaf to be a Hall of Famer. I wonder if he's one of those guys that hangs around like McGillney did for a long time before he finally gets in. I wonder if he gets in down the line because people revisit what his career means. But I think with the amount of guys retiring lately that had better careers, maybe more longevity careers and higher accolade careers, like a Patrice Bergeron, are just getting him kind of overlooked because they had better careers. I like Getzlaf a lot. And if he was in the Hall of Fame, I wouldn't be surprised. And if he doesn't make it, I, again, wouldn't be surprised. I think he's a really good hockey player. And for a lot of years, he was part of that curse of the Flames going into the Honda Center and, just getting their butts waxed. And he was a big reason for why he dominated every Flame centerman that went through there for like 15 years. So good hockey player. Deserves to have his number retired for sure. And I'm glad it's retired in Calgary too for the Hitman. Great hockey player. Great hockey player. That Robert, that's a long episode, and we appreciate the listeners sticking with us through this episode. A lot of draft talk. We're very excited for draft weekend, and I'll ask the question like I always do. Anything else you want to bring up on the podcast, or where can the folks find you and what's coming up from you on Flames Nation?
No, man, just really excited for this week, and all the stuff that we talked about today. I hope a lot of it does come to fruition, whether it's Conroy gets back in the top 10 for 2 picks, or can he pull off a blockbuster and somehow move up to 2 and get Stenberg? It's going to be really, really exciting. And the one thing I'll just kind of finish off with is if they do end up making every single pick, I do think that'll be a little disappointing.
Yes.
I think they should absolutely take advantage of all this draft capital. I think it would be a bit of a swing and a miss if Conroy just ended up holding on to all these pieces. So, yeah, fingers crossed that something happens, and hopefully come next Monday, we're going to have a lot to talk about. Or hopefully we have to pull off like an emergency pod. That would also be a ton of fun too. Let's hope Craig Conroy does something here. Come on, Connie, let's go.
Because I live under a rock and I didn't see this till now, about 4 hours ago, North Dakota Hockey announced that they're getting the Ruck brothers. Just thought that would be interesting.
Yeah, not for this upcoming season, but the following season after that.
So it's a very interesting move for them. So they can play Mezenhat for a season and then go to Nodak after that. So pretty interesting there. The Ruck brothers announced that this week. Interesting. That'll do it on the pod this week. We appreciate you guys for making us a part of your podcast rotations. Hopefully we hear from us this week because something fun happened for the Flames and we just couldn't bear ourselves to wait another week. If not, we'll see you next Monday when we have reaction from the draft. Enjoy the week. It's going to be a fun one. There's going to be tons of rumors, and I'll do the service announcement here, Robert. Please double check where you're getting your sources from and for those fake accounts, because Frank Saravelli is not going to give you good trade offers. Just not going to happen. Enjoy the week, folks. We'll see you next week here on the Red Mile Rundown, and go Flames.